coming into my face. The broadcast is live.
Hello, ghouls and gals. So
Look at this. I got a beam of sunlight coming right in my face here.
it happened 30 seconds before we went live. I just watched it. You know,
I gotta move my blind down a little bit.
Yeah, there's nothing here. So, but anyway,
I'm facing the sunset. There
we're
we
here.
go.
Yeah, we're here on the Friday night.
Yep.
Before the big July 4th. I'll be getting married in 2 weeks, 13 days, something like that.
What day are you getting married? The 11th?
I think it's the 8th.
The 8th? Well, the 4th is a Saturday.
Yeah. But we'll be gone.
It's going to be the 8th?
Yeah, we'll be gone.
Getting married in the middle of the week?
Yeah, we're going to be gone all. We go all week. The place we're going, it's an elopement package. You know.
Oh, so you're not having a big wedding?
That's just it. You know,
you've done that once already. Enough with that.
I've done it once. You know, back in the 90s. The fact that I'm getting married is amazing. If I hadn't known her for 15 years, this probably wouldn't be happening. You know, probably longer than that a little bit. But anyway, and she's had a previous wedding and stuff, and I pictured it just being, hey, we'll pay $300 for a preacher and get the license. And I know where this waterfall is on this hiking trail. Little did I know that once she started playing on the internet, there's elopement packages out there. People are like ready for the elopements. I'm just like,
they got you covered.
I wasn't about to play the logic game here. Like, if it's you don't plan an elopement, silly me. But the place we're going is in Tennessee. It's really nice. It sounds like we'll be getting married under a willow tree and at sunset with these little lights. You know.
Here's a bit of trivia for you that I discovered one night while looking at a map. Tennessee is the state that has the largest number of states at its borders.
Really?
I think it borders 7 states, maybe. I can't remember the exact number, but Tennessee has the most states.
I'm doing them in my head, and I can believe it. I can believe it. And the thing about Tennessee, I live very close to Tennessee. I've spent some time in Tennessee. I think the furthest I've been out is Chattanooga. So I've probably been halfway through the state. I've never really crossed the time zone there, I don't think. Anyway, but I've been down in Atlanta, Alabama, on down. But anyway, the thing about Tennessee that blows my mind, and I totally get it when I meet people that say this, is that they hated Tennessee as much as they loved Texas. I've had some good times in Tennessee. But I don't live there. You know what I mean? Like, you know.
I had a friend who lived in Tennessee for a short while. I think they ran him out of there.
That's what I mean. There's no way I'm putting Tennessee on blast here, you know. But I get what they're saying. You know, like I said, I've just been a visitor. I met watch me go blank now. Batgirl and Catwoman from the '66. Julie Newmar, Yvonne Craig. I met Yvonne Craig again with my luck at the wrong time. I was talking about marriage and wives. I actually took my ex-wife to one con down in Knoxville, and she just got a big kick out of Yvonne Craig just snubbing me when she saw me, looking at me like I smelled bad, you know. And then you had Julie Newmar, who had a long line, but she saw Yvonne Craig, and this is like in the 90s. Yvonne Craig looked early 2000s. Yvonne Craig. Way she looked at me, Julie Newmar saw it and told me to come over there and just talk to me for a minute. You know, that's why I don't have pictures, you know. And then I just remember Yvonne Craig kind of giving her a side glance that I didn't catch enough of to tell you what it said. But I felt the look. I felt the eyes on me, you know. So I saw Batgirl and Catwoman having a moment in real life, and then right beside of them, Chewbacca, Peter Mayhew. You know, he's just sitting there taking it all in. He was looking around some people, and as tall as he was, I couldn't believe he had to go that far. Yeah. So good times.
Chewbacca, what a Wookiee.
I didn't talk to him, but it was cool, you know.
Yeah, I don't think I've talked to many celebrities at cons. I actually haven't been to a ton of cons either.
Well, the biggest difference that I see between way back when, and of course, I'm at that age where I can remember something from 2001 like it was just a year or two ago in my mind, but I have a problem telling you something happened 3 months ago. But the biggest thing I've seen is that I'm really not one of those big time celebrity starstruck guys. I've been starstruck by Joe Sennett. I got starstruck by meeting one of the Ramones. I mean, it happens, but not very much. But the biggest thing that I've seen is that it's gone from when you made a celebrity that used to have a U shape, all the tables would be in a big U shape, and they would get their own big section of the room, or the lines would be long. Now, they line up all these bars like little aisles, and you stay right back here, and everybody goes one at a time up there, or they go into a back room. That's the biggest thing I've seen. Like, they just make it feel like you're, I don't know, trying to get into studio, 69 or whatever, or whatever it's called. But yeah, they really put on a bit more of a presentation, and I think it's more for the celebrity than it is for the people.
Those Hollywood stars I remember reading about some of those Hollywood stars. They make quite a bit of money on the convention circuit, the Comic Con.
I'd imagine so.
Because they can get like 10 grand a weekend. And matter of fact, I think it was, who was that? I was reading some person talking about it, some star, and she was saying that a lot of times now, because it used to be they didn't want to do them, didn't want to do cons, and they also didn't want to kind of do genre movies like those, superhero stuff or sci-fi stuff or whatever like that. But once, 15, 20 years ago, when the cons started being big and they could make money in it, they all wanted a piece of that. And now it's like they can make more doing like Comic Cons in their downtime than they can making like indie movies or something.
In North Carolina, they're having the 6th, 7th, and 8th Doctor. They have all these people on Doctor Who. They've had Billy Piper. They have. It used to be people from back when, and now they get people who are back then and current. I mean, they had the Goonies down here a couple years ago at GalaxyCon, RaleighCon. I don't know. I don't go to them, but I have them on Facebook, and it just amazes me who they announce. But I can see them making the money. Can you hear me? I just realized my microphone is way over there. But it just blows my. I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's cool to add that to it. But you got like Fanboy Expo, which seems to be more about the celebrities. You got these horror conventions. That the only reason I didn't go to one of those is because it's like every one of them's like a 2-hour drive for one in Charlotte. It's always been a mess. And you can turn around and the Fonz is hanging out with you because he got tired of the mess hanging at the table. Or you can go up to Kentucky. And I got told that, if you're going to go to those to have a good time, I've been told you need $300 to $1,000 because you're going to pay for everything.
Yeah.
Everything's a little bit expensive, but it's a great time. It's a great time for us to be where we're at in the world at this point in time where you have those opportunities,
Paolo just said, damn, you guys jump time slots more than Earth Final Conflict. That's all Tim. I got nothing going on.
Yeah,
he's the one with the schedule. I got nothing going on.
Hit the bell. Yeah. I don't know what we're going to do.
Tim sends me a message, says, Jared, can you make it tonight at 7? I'm like, yeah.
I know he's joking, but here's what happens. Right? I'm like, we had our thing going pretty good Saturday mornings.
Right?
And then all of a sudden, life pops up, and then I have to figure out work. And then I'm like, okay, it's lunchtime after work. I can't do it tomorrow. Hey, Jared.
I've got no life popping up. That's what it is.
Oh yeah. My weekend is packed this weekend, and I found out yesterday. So. Yeah, but I think that's what's cool about our show.
Want me to show you what comics I got this week?
Yeah, I got a few things after you as normal. Yeah.
First of all, I haven't even looked at this yet. This is something from Aftershock. Whoops, there we go. Support our shops. I think it's a sampler. They sent this out to support comic shops, and I think they sent it to the comic shops for free, and the comic shops could sell it or give it away or something. It's got, Colin Bunn, Steve Orlando. I think it's just David Mack. I think it's just a sampler of all 2 or 3 pages of all the Aftershock books. Really haven't checked it out yet, but I'll take a freebie. Oh, did we lose Tim?
No. I'm giving you the floor. I'm giving you
okay. There we go. we got that. We got Monstrous. What issue is this? 28. I've been with this since the beginning. It's always fun. High fantasy war stuff going on. Crazy. Like I said, I've been with that since the beginning. Once in Future, number 8. This is a good one. Who is this? Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora.
Kieran Gillen. Now, there's a name that's ringing a bell.
Yeah, he's written a lot of stuff. I've actually bought. I like about half of his stuff a whole lot, and the other half I'm kind of indifferent to. But I've been buying like 1 or 2 Kieran Gillen books, written books, for about 5 years now, I think. But this one is King Arthur. This one's pretty interesting because it's about this guy and his grandmother fighting monsters, but the monster turns out to be King Arthur. King Arthur has come back to the present, but the problem is King Arthur is back in the present, and he's supposed to come back when Britain is in danger, and and he's
that's part of the legend with King Arthur. He's supposed to return.
The problem is he's a 4th century king. All the people living in Britain now, he was there before the Saxons, before the Normans, before the Angles. So everybody is a foreigner to King Arthur. His people aren't even really there anymore. So that's why he's kind of the villain of the piece.
It all comes back around. Have you watched the news? We're going to be right back in the 4th century the way they're going. I mean, we need the king. We need the king. It's good to be king.
Yeah.
Yes.
The latest Cerebus in Hell, Vark Wars. Cerebus doing comics. The Dave Sims cut and paste comic strips. I enjoy it. It's me, and this is copy 12,067 out of 1,860. So me and 1,860 people like this book. And then I picked up a couple of first issues. That Texas Blood. This is Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips. Jacob Phillips is Sean Phillips' son. The guy from Brubaker and Phillips, who I've been buying their work for 20 years now. So I figured I'd give this a try. It was solid, if not spectacular.
Right.
It was okay, but didn't make it on my pull list. This did. Osiris Path, number 1. By a bunch of people I've never heard of. From a comic book company I've never heard of. Behemoth Comics.
Are they going for a heavy metal feel with that one?
Maybe. Created by Christian Moran. Interior art and color by Walt Barna. And then there's Christian Moran, Corey Kalman, and Brockney McKinney listed as writers. But first of all, I like it as a comic. Mm-hmm. It's got a nice. There's some smaller companies using this really this cover stock that just feels so nice. It's got a good. It's a heavier cover stock, unlike these. J-Rock. Dave Sim, who did Cerebus, now does a comic called Cerebus in Hell, except every issue is a new number 1. Every issue is a parody cover of something else. So that's a parody of Empire Strikes Back. He just did a parody of Green Lantern, Green Arrow. So it's unless your comic shop is on the ball, collecting it is going to be annoying because you can't just put it on your pull list because every single like my Roy who runs my comic shop, which I hope lasts past this summer because he said it might not. I'll have to see. He does this kind of as a hobby. He's got a full-time job that he does remotely for some credit card company where he writes code for a credit card company. So he writes code to make his own comic book software. And every week I get a let's see if Dave Sim can do 300 number 1s in a row. Maybe he can. So he writes, like every week I get an email. And with not everything in previews, but all the big companies.
Yeah.
And if I want something, I can just click on the link and put on my pull list. Like I bought this.
Uh-oh.
that says, "Oh, you pulled this off." What is that? Shelf stock notification. So it's like if you buy something off the shelf, you get an automated email that says, "Hey, did you like it? If you want to put it on your pull list, just click this link." So I was able to do that with this. But with he was telling me one day, he's like, I finally wrote some code to put every Cerebus #1 on your pull list, because there was 3 people in the comic shop collecting that. Him, the owner, Roy, me, and the guy who gets everything. There's one guy at the comic shop who buys 1 copy of everything that comes out in the month.
He got tired of he kept tired of the 1 month he didn't buy something. It became a big key book,
And I'm actually missing 1 issue. I'm missing Cerebus Agent of Codpiece, the Nick Fury one, because it just never Diamond just never shipped it to the comic shop.
What was it called? I think it froze up.
Oh, Cerebus Agent of Codpiece. It's a Nick Fury. It's a Nick Fury parody that covers. The only one I missed. It doesn't even really matter that I missed it, because it's not like they continue from one to the other. But
when people do Steranko, they do one of 2 covers. They do the big pop art cover from #4, where it's him striking a pose and all the pop art behind him, white.
That's the one I think they did.
Okay. Or they do the one where the earth is blown up behind him while he's in space with his gear.
Right. That's the other one. But this actually made it on my pull list. It was pretty cool. The story was basically like I said, besides it was funny because I was sitting there. I think Dynamite or IDW put out a Stephen King adaptation comic this week. It was a #1, something from Stephen. And I was looking at the 2 comics to decide which one I wanted to get. And it really came down to, I liked the art in this one a little better. Plus, it was such a nicer comic, because the Dynamite one was just your regular self-covered one with no cover stock that they put out, Marvel, DC, and Image all do. And I was like, you know what? I just liked the one with the good cover stock better. So that's what I picked. But this was actually pretty cool. It's got some nice artwork. I think it took place in the 50s. It was one of those, the real space program in the 50s, not that one that we all know about. So it's like they're already on the moon.
The dog,
so the basic, the basic premise is it's the 50s. We already got people on the moon, and they brought an archaeologist up with them. They're like, they got this. I think he was an archaeologist. They were like, "We need you on the moon." He's like, "All right." He's like, "We're going to the moon? What the hell is this?" And he's like, "Don't worry about it. Top secret." So they get up to the moon. There's a little sci-fi adventure going on there, and then the big reveal was there's an Egyptian ruin on the far side of the moon.
It's Iron Maiden.
So now he's there to try to figure out what this Egyptian, and all of a sudden they get attacked by these guys in all black, and they're like, "Oh no, it's the followers of Set," and they've got the guys that are.
They would go for the Dark Lord, right to Set, Oh, is he frozen? Or am I frozen?
Yep, I just spun a little there, I noticed. So now, the next issue, they're going to have to go to Mars. So now it's so it was a nice first issue. I enjoyed it a whole lot.
They're going to go to Mars? I'm trying to think I'm trying to think who would be on Mars.
Something to do with these Egyptian ruins. Who knows? It was an intriguing enough issue for me to put it on my pull list. And a lot of times when you get something like this, when I get something like this, I put it on my pull list and I'm like, it's not really that big a commitment, because how many issues could it last?
Right. I think that's kind of cool. And I like how the people who are doing the book, you don't know who they are. There's no names. So there's no preconception of how their style is going to be. What are they going to come up with?
Yeah, I'll give it a try. You know what? And if I liked it better than that Texas Blood. So this is the one that made it on my pull list.
Well, I think in about 2 weeks, hopefully I'll be going to an actual comic book shop and look around and see what I can find. Because I make it no secret, I go through the previews list online with my online store, and nothing's really grabbing me, and I think it would be different if I could flip through some of the books or something.
Oh yeah.
But what happened with me is I ended up going to Books A Million. that was open finally. I think everything started to open up around June 11th around here. And I found these books on sale, and I bought these out of convenience. And then when I got them home and started looking at them, this was a really good deal. I mean, I got these super cheap. They were on sale. Plus I got the discount with the Books a Million card. But these are really nice. I got this trade with the most lackluster cover I've ever seen for what's inside. But this is the Mutant Massacre trade. Okay. This is going back to 1986 where, you got some key books there. You had the Morlocks down there, and you had these guys coming down and massacring everybody. This is where Angel lost his wings. Walt Simonson came on X Factor. Everything was kind of jailed. And the fact that they put Mr. Sinister and Gambit on the cover, they are not in the story. That's what blows my mind. They're not in the story. This was like retro stuff where they said Gambit was down there killing people. And then they were saying Mr. Sinister was the one that hired them all, and you found that out a year later. But the Morlock Massacre this is where a lot of people draw the line in X-Men. Like, all this stuff was great, Dark Phoenix, the Brood, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, when the Morlock Massacre happened, you took out half the X-Men, you put them in Excalibur, and you started having them on the road in Australia. This is where a lot of X-Men fans jumped off, and a lot jumped on. But
where I jumped off?
Yeah,
Kool and Garth.
Yes, yeah, and and actually, I was going through my X-Men books. I'm missing part 2 of that story, or part 1. I don't know, the one with the Vision on the cover.
I don't know.
But this has got some great art in it. I mean, I got to the page where I opened up that page where John Romita Jr. is drawing it. It's very 80s, very of its time. But when I opened up that page and saw the Morlocks for the first time, I was back. I was 13 years old. I've done a video on this years ago, and it still gets a few hits. But it's pretty cool. You get sketches in here. They got you got Thor. You got all the crossovers over with it. And like I said, comic book collecting wise, this was the first time they tried this. You got all these alternate covers in the back. But what I really liked, that advertisement. This was the first time you actually got a map on how to try to read these. These were all over the Marvel Comics inside and out in 1986. Wow. You had the 25th anniversary going on. With all the covers having the 25th anniversary thing and stuff. So now I have all of these and multiples of some of these, so this is going to be convenient.
No, it's interesting when you point that out on the cover. The bookstore market is very different than the comic shop market or the regular comics market. I can remember learning years ago, for those licensed books like Star Trek. I always hated those paperback covers, the floating heads paperback covers they have, like for Star Trek.
Why do people hate floating heads? People hate floating heads.
I hate those floating head painted covers and stuff. Like comic book ones don't bother me that much because they didn't happen that often. Okay. But the Star Trek, but what it was they specifically asked for those. You had to because they wanted to show you who was in the book. So if you were doing a Star Trek book with Kirk, Scotty, and Chekhov, those 3 had to be on the cover. So they had to give you like an action shot with floating heads of the other guys who kind of were on the cover. So it became kind of very artistic how you blend in the floating heads. Floating heads covers in comics are different because floating head comics and covers on comics are just, they cut out the head but there's nothing artistic about it. It just becomes a design element. Yeah. And the bookstore, it's part of the, you work all the giant heads into the composition of the painting. But it's like, but that's why Frank Frazetta made his name, because he didn't do stuff like that. That's why, if you see a Frank Frazetta Conan the Destroyer cover next to a Star Trek floating head cover, you're going to go to the Conan, the Frank Frazetta one almost always.
I have the books. I have the books boxed up, but I need to look at the company that if you were going to give Frank Frazetta's work back to him, he was going to give you something spectacular. And there's probably about 9 or 10 Conan covers that are the best ones ever because they gave his art back to him. He gave him. I mean, he went all out for him.
Well, that was standard in the. It was only in comics that they kept the art. In illustration, you didn't keep someone's art.
I can't. They kept. He said this was the only company that would give his art back. I mean, he said
I don't know who he was working for at the time.
Yeah,
but it was standard in illustration to get your art back.
Okay,
because those were actual paintings. Matter of fact, one of the defenses there was, especially with comic book art, is if you were actually buying the art, you have to pay taxes on it. So it's like the state was like, whoa, what do you mean? You were buying art for from all those years? Where's the tax? Where's the tax from that?
Brother, your New York came out for a minute. New York in there for a minute. I'll look it up later. I think it's one of the sites that are run for Frank Frazetta where they showed those covers and talked about the art. So I might look it up later and see if
maybe some small fly-by-night company, but you did not keep Norman Rockwell's paintings.
Yeah,
you probably didn't even get them. They shot them and sent you a negative of the painting. Yeah, you didn't. And also, the markets were different. I can remember. I didn't know especially the era of the early 2000s into the era of the superheroes just standing there on the covers.
Mm-hmm.
That was because of bookstores. When what was it? Ultimate Spider-Man. When they first collected Ultimate Spider-Man in trade, I think it was Barnes and Noble asked for more cover, and they just had him like on the. It was just him on the cover swinging. Yeah. Barnes and Noble asked them to do more covers like that, just the character solo. So then, of course, Marvel started doing every cover like that.
Yeah, I can believe it. I can believe it. I had some. We used to talk about what were they doing, and the word marketing came up. Nobody specifically said Barnes and Noble, but we kind of knew. We kind of knew the book. I mean, it was kind of common knowledge if you read Wizard and stuff that they were trying to expand to bookstores, and they always brought up Neil Gaiman's Sandman for getting the trade market booming, all that stuff. So you were kind of in the flow, and it wasn't a big surprise. But we never knew Barnes and Noble was specifically the one.
That was I think it was Barnes and Noble. This is whenever the first this is early 2000s. I think whenever that Ultimate Spider-Man trade hit
I remember when Ultimate Spider-Man hit. I mean, people went nuts for it. And I remember the trade, this is, like I said, this is early internet days, but supposedly they're like the trade was selling out in places. They're going to go to second and third print and stuff. That was the news. But people had their Ultimate Spider-Man. I just remember I've said about what I said about Ultimate Spider-Man again. It's kind of easy to do Spider-Man and rearrange the lore when it's already laid out for you. It
was a remake. That's what it was.
Now, I usually don't like really push people towards trades unless I really want them just to sample something. But I got this for convenience also. I think this came out. I'm going to look up when it came out the summer of 90, and I was going to be a senior, and that was the days where I was actually dating a lot more, but you know what, baby, it's Wednesday, I'll catch you later. I didn't say it was comic book day, but I'm like, we won't be seeing each other on Wednesday. And Infinity Gauntlet came out, so I bought this because it was on sale. I'm tired of digging through the boxes, having on the shelf, just if I want to flip through it, because I think the very first issue of this is George Perez is inspiring in it. I swear when I've read George Perez for so long, it may completely be in my head, but sometimes I feel like when he's having a good time on something, it makes you.
I think he has ebbs and flows.
Yeah. And the first issue of Infinity Gauntlet, man, he just feels like he's having a blast.
That cover is great.
Yeah. And this is the first issue cover. I mean, you talk about something. I mean, I remember grabbing that thing off the rack and going straight home, shutting that door. And it was one of the few times that I could not get off the cover to start the book. I did not want to be disturbed. I
I
mean,
can remember. I like I said, I never had any interest in the revival of Thanos since I loved that '70s stuff so much. But I read the first issue of Infinity Gauntlet and back when it came out, and I thought it was okay.
well,
Then Ron Lim took over, and I was like, no thanks.
yeah, I feel like I felt burned. I felt burned big time because I feel like they brought in Perez just to sell it to you, and he wasn't going to stay on.
Right.
Years later, the story is he was overworked. He was writing Wonder Woman. He was writing War of the Gods. He was doing a lot of work, and he picked this up. He just got burnt out. Had to give up something.
That's what I always figured because George Perez finishes things.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I never read any more of that until these True Believers that I picked up. I think I have issues 4, 5, and 6 in True Believers versions, and I read those. they're solid. I was like, you know what, these are pretty good.
I tell you what, when I find these stories, or if I see it on Facebook, I'm gonna start doing screenshots and stuff. Mm-hmm. But the story behind Infinity, I'll brag on the trade in a minute about why I'm saying people really need to get this in trade. But the story is that Jim Starlin killed Batman. We had death in the family, right? So the story was they voted. He wrote 2 versions of the story. This version where Robin lived was printed in a Batman annual during Final Crisis or something, or Infinite Crisis, one of them, right? But what happened is that they went through with it. Jim Starlin, they put out the story where Jason Todd, Robin was killed. Marketing raised hell and was like, we are marketing Batman and Robin stuff. Where the hell do you get off killing Robin? DC's marketing department supposedly raised hell, and Jim Starlin took the fall. He was let go. And what does he do? He goes back to Marvel, and that's where we get Infinity Gauntlet coming back. They put him on, he went on Silver Surfer. He put out the Thanos quest, and then we had the trilogy that came out of this.
I want to go back to whose comment is this for a second? Tommy Bagley says, I can't remember which creator it was, but they said they went on a tour of Marvel Comics in the early 70s and were astonished that editors would give away random Kirby pages. Yeah, they would. There's plenty of stories of that. The story they give them to anyone but the artists.
Unless you were at his house. Now, the stories, and I think it was Lynn Wein or Marv Wolfman or somebody was telling the story. I read it in an interview.
Right.
And then I also saw some people talking about it in a documentary, but people would look up Jack Kirby's phone number in the phone book, go to his house, and you had all these teenage hippie types hanging out. Roz, his wife, is making sandwiches. They'd go downstairs to the studio. They would watch him just kind of draw. Marv Wolfman and Lynn Wein were the guys that were like talking about this, but I can't remember who's talking about it. But Kirby would like, oh, you like that? And he would hand somebody a page of art. They'd be staring at it, getting ready to walk out the door. And there's Roz waiting on him like, excuse me, dear. That goes through me. That goes through me. So Kirby would be like, yeah, you can have it, man. And all this stuff. And
Roz was like, no.
Yeah,
we can't be doing that.
See, this is why I love Jack Kirby and Roz Kirby's stories, man, because you can tell they were meant to be together. They were a partnership, you do the
John
work.
Romita and his wife Virginia were very much
the same way,
like that too. Yeah, because like I said, she worked at Marvel. She was my boss, and they were high school sweethearts. So not that John Romita was giving away artwork, but they, you could tell that they were a couple who'd been together all their life, and they fit.
Well, I tell you what, one of the things that actually warmed my heart, even if I wasn't a comic book fan, but after Jack Kirby died, I'm not quite sure. I heard little things here and there about, Roz, if she was going to be remembered or if people were going to treat her different and stuff. Mm-hmm. And she actually would show up at some cons and she always got a standing ovation from people when she walked through the door.
Yeah, people have nothing but nice things to say about her.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I like respect and stories like that. I'm a little bit old fashioned that way.
And Joe Sinnott, who just passed.
Oh,
he was one who everybody has nothing but nice things to say about.
Let me finish this. We'll talk about Joe if you want, man. But the biggest thing about this is Joe Rubenstein has got to be Rubenstein has got to be the most.
I think it's Stein. I don't even know.
Yeah. He's the most underrated inker that I can think of.
Good.
Yeah, he's he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for penciling the most inking over the most artists, pencils and stuff, thanks to his official handbook of the Marvel Universe. But he was magic on Perez in here. I didn't notice it back in the day, but I noticed it in this trade. Now that you have like decent card stock, this decent paper, and the coloring in this, just everything pops. I mean, this is one of those things where I'm like, we can forget about the story. Let me show you how good it looks. So I definitely recommend everybody get a little soft cover or hard cover of this if it's newer. I mean, it's just really great. See, but what I love when Perez, this is why I'm saying Perez had a good idea, was having a good time there. Yeah, you have several corners of when these heroes would pop up that you get a little design like this. I did not see him do that since '86 when he did the history of the DC universe after Crisis with Batman and Superman.
You know where Perez was having a really good time?
Where?
JLA Avengers.
Yes.
I think it was. I didn't read actually. I had like a trade of it on my shelf for a decade, and I never actually read it till like 2 years ago.
Really?
One of those, yeah. There was one of those where I read it, and then after I read it, I just kept it around for a couple of weeks and would just open it up and look at pages because the pages were so well designed.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just amazing.
Oh man, we're gonna have a whole conversation here, man. You just opened Pandora's box. The issue where they actually play around with going through time back and forth, where they mix the different eras of Justice League and Avengers. I mean, you had the GIF and JLI years, you had the satellite years of but you had to mix with the Avengers. He was having a blast. George Perez captured the 70s Avengers, the early 80s Avengers, the mid 80s Avengers, even the 90s Avengers, and the Justice League. And he just you could tell what year it was, what era of those teams, if you were like a big fan in there. I mean, Perez took you on you time traveled. I consider JLA Avengers the true, you have the beginning of the Marvel Universe in 61. And to me, that's kind of where it ends. That's, that's the book, of the Marvel you wanted and stuff. But yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I can't believe you didn't read it until 2 years ago. How did you?
I just sometimes I get things, they sit on the shelf. I never read them because I'm reading new stuff all the time.
One of the few times you should feel judgment.
I think part of the reason I never read it was I don't like that prestige format of book, the Dark Knight format, that square bound format. I just don't like it.
Yeah,
I just don't know. And so I remember it first came out in that, and I kind of ignored it. And then I got a trade of it, and I think my ignoring of it just continued.
Let me tell you something. I was that kid waiting on that thing since I was like 9 or 10. What was that column Dick Giudardo had? Meanwhile or something? He had an editorial page, and they announced it. They announced it when I was like 9 or 10, and I waited. Eventually, I kind of forgot about it. Then I'd be like, what happened to that? Wait a minute. Oh, it's going to come after Crisis. Nobody told me that, but I'm like, oh, it's going to come after Crisis. They had to get this out. Then we had Legends, and I'm like, where's it at? And I think I finally let go around 89. Okay. Giffen and DeMantis had been like on Justice League forever. And I'm like, this isn't happening. I found it funny when it came out
early 2000s. I think it finally came out.
Yeah.
And it's like hardly anyone was interested in it.
No,
it wasn't like the huge. It's kind of like, I don't remember.
We went nuts around here. I'm
sure there were some people who went nuts.
Yeah,
but I don't think it was like the best. It wasn't a bestseller. It wasn't. I'm sure all the old people went nuts, but it's like I'm sure the younger collectors, I didn't even give it a thought.
I think I was around 20s. I wasn't 30 when it came out yet. So I was in my late 20s. And I'm sitting here thinking we went to Heroes Con. A bunch of us went to Heroes Con that year. And we're down in the South. This is like Virginia on down. I really feel like you being up north and us being down here, I swear some of the talks we've had, there's a difference with.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes.
But we went to Heroes Con. People were talking about it. And I say talking about it, not like, oh my God, the Beatles have arrived. No, it was like, did you check it out? it was good. Did you remember that part? It was part of every conversation. I mean, it was around.
It barely made to me at the time, from what I remember of it, it barely made a blip on the radar of all the other comics that were coming out.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't big, like it's hard to compare to early 90s stuff because that stuff was so big. But even stuff now, like when the latest crossover, the big crossover #1 issue comes out and everybody goes to the stores to get it and it's #1 on the sales charts and everybody's talking about it, at least until issue 4 comes out when everyone forgets about it. It wasn't even that big.
I'll tell you a part of what might have been the problem. Just going where I'm going at. But if you had been a fan of Justice League or Avengers and you actually read the book for a long time, it wasn't this big spectacular story that felt like a stunt. They pulled from history. You had to be knowledgeable to catch some of the stuff in there.
Well, I think it also because it kind of missed it missed its window in time.
Yeah, definitely.
If it came out 20 years early, 15 years earlier, it would have been huge.
Yeah,
but
I think
it took so long to finish it.
But that last issue, I think that last issue with the cover of Superman holding Captain America's shield, and
everyone goes after that on YouTube. That's everybody goes after that on YouTube.
That's what I'm saying. That's not.
But I also think it's not big that since Marvel and DC don't keep stuff like that in print, it's not an evergreen.
Yeah,
like that could have been an evergreen. That could have been, your what do they call? They call it the backlist in the book trade, where you've got your backlist is your evergreen stuff that always sells. So you've got your new stuff all up in the front of the catalog, and the back of the catalog is your backlist. That's all your stuff that sells year after year after year. That could have been an evergreen that sells year after year after year. But
now, not to be random here, I mean, we'll get back to this, but I can't remember if it was you or somebody. Somebody was trying to tell me that the DC Comics, DC and the Marvel trades of Amalgam Comics, where they merged their universes, supposedly one of those are like really like you can get some big bucks on eBay because they'll never see print again. I don't know who told me that, but anyway. But the Justice League Avengers thing, it started with a little bit of a hiccup. It started with George Perez. And I feel like that was the only stunt was to get it out there. George Perez was about to go exclusive with CrossGen Comics. And he wrote a letter because nobody knew the future. He wrote a letter saying, I'm about to go exclusive. If you want to do this, guys, do it now. And they did it.
Paolo just said Marvel and DC only rush jail Avengers to keep Perez off of CrossGen.
There we go.
And then he also said, my LCS owner said this came out 3 years too late. If they did with Morrison and Quitely, I'd have a lot more orders. So
really,
yeah. Like I said, I think it missed its time. It wasn't as huge as it could have been.
I mean, the whole thing is like you guys are probably right. I'm just like I said, I looked up. I'm one of those kids that waited for that thing for 17, 18 years. I mean, I was a kid when I read it and I knew it was supposed to come.
I remember thinking JLA Avengers, really? They're finishing that? I remember being confused by it even.
Well, it was supposed to be Mark Waid and Kurt Busiek both writing it. Mark Waid ended up running CrossGen more or less or something. I've heard stories about what he was talking about, like he was defending people from the crazy millionaire owner or something of CrossGen. And he just said that Kurt Busiek is more than capable of taking care of this. So, I know a lot of people were disappointed with that. But, and I'm sitting here thinking Morrison Quietly were probably hot because didn't Earth 2 just come out? I got it over here, a hardback where they reintroduced the Crime Syndicate around this time.
Morrison was already hot by then. He was hot on Morrison on the X-Men. And I think Quitely was just along for the ride.
I'm trying to remember the year. What was like the year? Yeah, what was going on?
Yeah, that was early 2000s also, because I know it was still Marvel then. So
yeah, Morrison Quietly. That's very interesting. I mean, that tells you that's like a time bubble. That tells you exactly. But Morrison Quietly put out that Crime Syndicate hardback book, a one shot, and that thing was hot. You want to look at some comments? I haven't been paying attention.
J-Rock says he'd buy a hardcover of that in a second. Yeah. A nice hardcover with good binding, because the problem I was having with the trade too was seeing some of those George Perez pages were designed as kind of 2-page spreads, and they were just so well designed. And I would like to open them up and lay them flat to see them. That would be really nice.
George Perez, it's like the more characters he has to draw, the happier he is. His Crisis on Infinite Earths, where you opened up like issue 5 or 6, and every hero was on the monitor ship, and it was a 2-page spread, and you just kind of walk through that trying to find who everybody was. I got to throw this one out. This is like my crack right here. But you talk about Garcia Lopez. Yeah, when George Perez took off to do Crisis on Infinite Earths, they brought in Garcia Lopez to do this great story where they brought in the Titans again, or Greek gods or something. And Garcia Lopez did some stuff in there that was art. Like, in my opinion, you could put some of that stuff on a chapel ceiling and have somebody reproduce him. He's awesome.
I have a page of original art from him from his Twilight series, I think was the name of it.
I would love to have that. I got a page of his stuff from DC Comics Presents #4 with Kimmo.
Oh, wow.
Charlton 66 sent that to me. See what else we got here. Paulo, of course, said Marvel and DC only rush JLA Avengers, keep Perez out of cross-gen. I have zero doubt about that. What we got here? Big Ticket with J-Rock. What's up, J-Rock? I waited for Freddy versus Jason. After Jason Goes to Hell ending, I waited like 5 years for it to finally come out. But it was a teen. 5 years felt like 20 years. Yep. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute.
It's even oversized. It's the name of the comic is Twilight, issue 3, page 23. And I just found this on eBay for fairly cheap one day.
Oh, man, I know exactly what page that is, too. Oh, my gosh.
And I just had to get it.
And
I don't think it cost me more than... Uh-oh. One of the pasted down balloons is coming off. I better be careful. I got to fix that.
Thanks, Tom. Dr. Silver Age is here. I couldn't wait for it to come out. Then it didn't. And then I think the Mad Comic interviewed even more. Yeah. And I think Rob Liefeld ended up in the 80s. They actually started that JLA Avengers. The picture, the pages are out there by Perez. The people would have them in art galleries. Like there'd be a traveling art gallery. Rob Liefeld bought all those up. Rob Liefeld owns the pages to the original one.
It's good to be rich.
And Tom Bagley right there. It might help if I read the comments,
Yeah. Perez had a clause in his cross-gen contract that allowed him to do the crossover. Yeah.
So they did do a really nice absolute edition of Avengers versus Justice League with the slip case. I knew it was reprinted. I mean, I knew they came out with a trade, and I knew.
I didn't know they didn't have that. That must be out of print and expensive now.
It was 2 volumes, with one volume being all about the art from Perez's original 80s crossover pencils, which I think they probably had to do a deal with Liefeld to be able to print those again.
Yeah.
But that's what I was saying, man. Like where you said a lot of people weren't excited, and I would love. I might actually, what is it, Comic-Con or something? You can go back and look at sales.
Yeah. Look, I barely remember it making a blip.
Wow. That was a good times in there. Let me grab something here with Joe Sinnott. If you want to talk
grab some Joe Sinnott.
Yeah.
Jolton Joe Sinnott.
I think the last person that I talked about that passed away was back when Bernie Wrightston. And that's because I had met him a few times, and that made him seem more real. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Not just like hearing somebody famous died or something. Charles Schultz, when he died, that I was bothered. Christopher Reeves, bothered. You know what I mean? And it always amazes me how people you don't know, you just know them through their work, if you even call it that, how it can bother you when they pass away. I knew Joe, when he passed away, I was going to be bothered, because when I met him back in 2004, that he was a good man. You could just tell. Oh,
I didn't know him that well, but I hung out with him a couple of times at cons.
Yeah. But this is actually, he had some prints and stuff. That's his art, not just his ink. And it's very John Buscema-like, But he drew this in 2002. Joe Sinnott did X-Men. I don't remember the actual issue number, but he was on, not X-Men, Fantastic Four from 1965 to what, like 81 or 82? Yeah, I mean, he was on. I mean, to me, he's just as important as Jack Kirby on that book.
Yeah, he was.
Identity.
Some of the best Joe Sinnott work I saw recently was I reread some Thors from the mid to late 70s.
Simonson's Thor.
Simonson's Thor, and I think it was John Buscema.
I probably have those.
Simmett over John Buscema was beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, it really was.
Yeah. I mean,
here, I want to show you this because I now share a nickname with Joseph. These are some custom comics I was doing the production on with some people recently. And there's a Bill Sienkiewicz cover for you.
Awesome. I got some Sienkiewicz to show here in a minute too. Nice.
But this is the most recent one. But John Krasinski, something to do with him in his show. And they're of course doing the Marvel thing where they were putting all nicknames here. So I became Jolton Jared Osborne in this comic. I share the Jolton with Joe Sinnott.
Yeah, that's going to be the name of the next Cavern of Chaos show. Hallermouse with the Jolton guy, you know. And thank you, Dr. Silver Age. I'm really glad Dr. Silver Age is here. I get to see him on Instagram and Facebook more than anything. Check out his channel. Go to his channel. Paul David's a new face for me here. Give him a big shout out. Thanks for popping in, Dave. I meant to say that before. J Rock, go check out his channel. J Rock's been around for quite a while.
Yep.
And but since you pulled out the six, you know, I'm starting to put. It's really odd. We'll talk about a book. I'm cataloging the comics, or I'll do this random thing where I'll walk by my bookshelf and won't even think about it and just stick my hand out. And one of the things I found was the Von Bode book that I went completely and totally blank on. I think this is one of Cobalt 60, and that looks a lot like the Red Rider from Wizards, the cover by Stout. Right. I don't know what came first. Cobalt 6. I think Cobalt 60 came first. Don't get me wrong. But they had I think this was a 3-issue miniseries where they're reprinting a bunch of stuff. This may have the stuff created by Von Bode, illustrated by Mark Bode, people, back and forth, written by Larry Todd. But it's post-apocalyptic stuff. That's just what I love. And I think there were 3 of these. I want to say this was put out by Tundra or somebody, but these are actually kind of pricey when you run across them. Yeah. I don't even know. I have to go back and look on a YouTube video. Yeah, it was Tundra. This is early 90s.
Oh, okay. Tundra.
Yeah.
They somehow lost money hand over fist. I don't know how. They didn't know what they were doing, I think is what it was, but I don't know. I don't know what they did. I don't know how you could lose as much money as Tundra lost. Nice.
Don't know a lot about Tundra. I never really heard of Tundra until The Crow. I have a comics illustrated over here from like 1990 or I don't know, 1991, whatever it was. And they introduced you to. They had an interview with. I still have the comic scene. Maybe it was comic scene, but they talked about. They gave you the interview with James O'Barr and The Crow because everybody had been waiting for the last issue that knew about The Crow back then.
Well, I knew about Tundra back when they came out. And I remember looking forward to it because it was the Turtles guys, Eastman and Laird.
Tundra? I thought they were Mirage.
No, Tundra, I think they were too. Mirage, okay. No, Mirage was their own thing that they published the Turtles on.
Because their studio, their studio was a Mirage. It didn't really exist.
Right. Then they made millions and millions of dollars. I mean, tens of millions. I think they each made $100 million. I mean, absurd amounts of money. And then they started Tundra to help publish all their buddies. And their buddies were all good cartoonists. I mean, Vaughn Bode, they're reprinting his stuff, and they had Rick Veitch, and all bankable names. And somehow, because they had no idea what they were doing publishing, they went through like $3 million like that, and it all fell apart.
Didn't Madman come out of there? Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, Tundra, to me, it was a blink in the eye. By the time you heard about them, it seems like they were already gone. Right. I think they did Madman. I'm pretty sure I'm right about The Crow. I mean, it seems like they just came and went. That's what, you had Kitchen Sink, you had Eclipse, and you would hear about Tundra third and Dark Horse.
Yeah, we got a couple of Tundra comments here. One from Paolo. during the Eisner 100th anniversary exhibit here in Port. Dennis Kitchen was a guest. He told me Tundra was being financed by venture capitalists. Could be. And also, Tommy Bagley says Tundra was likely a creator charity company. Eastman used a quarter of his turtle fortunes to do Tundra. I've heard stuff like that. Either way, it was like, I think it became it was almost like everybody was just getting big money doing Tundra stuff, but Tundra was making no money somehow.
All right.
So I think they were like paying their buddies big money, but not making any money, and it all fell apart. And I was like, how did you not make money? And it always says, because they just had no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, it's still the early 90s. Okay, this is blowing my mind because I'm having a moment here where I'm just going to kind of keep my mouth shut, because here's what's happening. I'm starting to connect the dots. I never heard any of this with Tundra.
Okay.
But you said, I mean, I never really thought about it. I never thought to look it up. Never really heard anybody talk about it. But now, with the way I look at the big picture of things, I got a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle book where Baudet did the cover for it. Somebody else at Tundra did something for him. I'm starting to like connect the dots and how they all kind of did a little bit of work for each other in the early 90s with these little books. And I'm sitting here like, how could I not see it? How could I not see it?
But it's amazing to me how quickly Tundra fell apart. And I was just like, I remember being baffled at the time, going, how did these guys mess everything up? They had all the talent in the world and somehow couldn't put out any comics that made money. But I guess it was,
like I said, down here, they came, they went. You heard about a few books afterwards. You know what I mean? I
didn't even see many Tundra books. I just read about them and heard about them at the time. It's not even like they were coming out and being in the shops. I don't know what happened.
That explains little things like this being worth a little bit of money and stuff here. I mean, wow. Well, it looks like I want to be looking up Tundra. Huh?
And speaking of books you've never heard of, I pulled one off my shelf that you probably never heard of. It came out in 2002, 2003, ran 12 issues. It's called Paradigm from Image Comics. This is the era of Image Comics that nobody remembers.
Is this when Valentino is running the show?
Or Stevens, who's running it? Yeah, Valentino is running the show. And it's by, and I always meant to reread this, but never have until this week. Cage. Oh yeah, Tate. I still have McKean's Cages. I want to reread that one too. That was a good series. That's good stuff.
I heard of that, but I didn't know it was Tundra. So yeah.
But yeah, this is issue 7. This is what I'm up to. And and I always meant to reread this because I remember this being very kind of ambitious and confusing. Because there's a lot of dialogue and there's a lot of pages too, though I think the early issues had like 35 pages each, and then it settled down to about 27 pages. So that's the equivalent of about 18 to 20 Marvel comic books rather than just 12. And the art is by Jeremy Juan, who's still around. He's a writer. I haven't seen his artwork, and he did a lot of he did some superhero stuff here and there. But he also was one of the writers, and I think he did some art on The Beauty, which I bought. And he's also now writing Red Mother, which is very good. So Jeremy Juan is still around, but what's the other guy? Matthew Cashel? I don't know. But even the artwork on this was so black and inky and dense that
I love stuff like that.
Oh, I love it too, but sometimes it was hard to penetrate. Let me see if I can get a page where
you're going to make me laugh like Beavis and Butthead if you say penetrate again.
Let me see if I can get a page that's really. I don't think there's one in this issue. I think there was one in the issue before it. Let me grab that. But what's interesting about this too is when this came out, I was reading a little bit of the intro to this too. They also have a big letters page. They really wanted to have a like pages like this get really dense because he draws a lot of this graphic detail.
Yeah, when they have the completely black background almost, I'm not a fan of that.
It's all just strict black and white. Like, look at that half splash there. It's tough to, like I said, it's tough to penetrate. It's kind of like the entire surface of the drawing is treated the same. He doesn't make the important things important and the less important things less important. So even reading this, there's a lot of dialogue. It gets really dense. Like I said, even like this drawing right up here, this little, it gives you all the texture, and it's all like black and white graphic texture. There's all graphic.
That almost looks like, who is it? Charlie Moore, Terry Moore, who did The Walking Dead? Anyway, it'll come to me.
Charlie Adler. Right?
Adler. Yeah.
But like, and I'm pretty sure it's based on photography too, with some of these faces and stuff. But like, it was interesting. I was reading about, I was reading some of the beginning of it, and he was telling us what he wanted to do and what his influences were. And one of his big influences, he says, was Starman.
There we go.
And at the time, I hadn't read Starman.
Okay.
But now, 17 years later, having read Starman, he's wearing his Starman influences on his sleeve in this.
Little Tony Harris there. And
I think the artwork really is kind of like Tony Harris, first of all. And second of all, I would describe Starman as
noir. Deco noir.
I wouldn't even describe it as noir. I'd describe it as half of it is about dialogue, introspection, and personal growth, and half of it is about the mythology of superheroes.
Hmm. I can agree with that. It's all about, it's all father to son, and the son becoming the father. A legacy.
Right.
It's not a legacy. Yeah. It merges the two things you're talking about. Yeah.
And this is so much about the same sort of stuff, because like I said, there's so much of dialogue in here, and it's so much about introspection and personal growth. And there's also like Starman was about, what's the name of the city?
Opal City. That's why I was getting the noir from. The city was actually a character.
Starman was about Opal City. They've got their own city in this that they're trying to give a personality to. I think Bogland. I can't remember the name of the city. Tells you how good a name it has. But they're trying to give you the name of they're trying to once again create this atmosphere of a city here. But it's more ground level than, because it's not a superhero book. Uh-huh. But there's these weird. Mythological characters in it too, because a lot of the dialogue that's going on is like the story starts with this guy walking down the street with his girlfriend, and they're kind of getting mugged. The mugger's got a gun on them. He's mugging them. Then a dog comes up to him, and the mugger points the gun over at the dog, and the girlfriend shoots the mugger dead. And they walk away, and the guy's just like, "You just shot that mugger dead. You carry a gun? You just shot that guy dead?" And she's like, "A lot of people die in this city. Don't worry about it. No one will notice." And the first issue ends with he's in his mind, and they're having this constant dialogue back and forth, this sort of Starman introspective dialogue. The dialogue's pretty good, and you can tell they're trying to be ambitious with the dialogue.
Right.
And then it ends with him going into her bathroom as the cops are knocking on her door, and all of a sudden, as he's in the bathroom, a woman opens up the shower curtain, and there's a whole other world behind the shower curtain, and that's when you learn there's kind of this level of mythical kind of creatures all behind in this next level, and all these creatures, they're not even creatures; they look human. I mean, they look. I think is one of the problems with it. They look kind of like everyone else. Was
anybody ever eating pizza in this story? Just wondered.
Yeah, there is actually some pizza eating in this story. As a matter of fact,
there's mushrooms. It had mushrooms. Yeah,
it's very, very
mushrooms.
They're trying to make it very trippy. They're trying to make it very sort of out there. They really are trying. And they said, like Starman, he wanted there to be a good letters page. So later on, there's like a 5 or 6 page letters page in the back of people discussing everything that's going on. And it's like,
that could be fun. Yeah, that could be that could be real fun.
And there's like here's this one strange creature that pops up. We don't know it. And there, so you start out with these three characters. You start out with the guy. His girlfriend she's a secondary character. The policeman who comes to interview him. And the third guy is just a tattoo artist who likes to stay in his apartment. And he's visited by, once again, they keep saying there's these 2 or 3 levels of these mystical creatures, but they never quite explain anything, at least not in these first 7 issues. They explain a little more as it goes on. But like I said, I haven't gotten to the end of it yet. I've always kind of I read this issue by issue when it came out. And I always wanted to read it all as one to see how it worked kind of when I had all the issues together. And it is kind of, 17 years later, I'm finally doing it. But I can remember, I'm not sure how well I'm remembering this, but I remember in the 12th issue when it ended, the writer apologizing for not being able to pull off what he wanted to pull off. And I remember it kind of being a glorious failure.
And this is called Paradigm?
Paradigm. It's 12 issues from Image Comics, 2002, 2003. Jeremy Juan, who's still around. If you can find the issues, they must be in the dollar bin. But as a Starman fan, you might enjoy this.
I'll definitely check it out. I'll try. I'll check it out. I'll keep it in the back of my head. The comic book shop I'm going in 2 weeks, there's a good chance it's going to have it, because it's been there forever. This is the place I bought the first appearance of Hellboy for $2.50. You know
what's funny too? Speaking of Paradigm, when I first bought this comic, bought the first issue, liked it. So of course the next week I'm going to tell them to put on my pull list, and I'm like, and all of a sudden I was like, I can't remember. I'm there with my friend Rob talking. I'm like, I can't remember how to pronounce it, but it's the one that I'm like, all of a sudden I got a blank. I'm like, but it's the one everybody always goofs on by mispronouncing it, Paradigm.
Oh my God.
Oh, Paradigm. I'm like,
I remember how not to say it.
All of a sudden,
I can't say it. I can't do this. I heard where I went to Subway so much, they've ruined me. There's times I can't remember if it's Chipotle or Chipotle. Just saying.
I heard so many people make the joke Paradigm.
Yeah.
That's what was in my head. I'm like,
as a comic book, that would actually work better. But the page you showed up where there's this mysterious creature where you just kind of popped it up and put it down. Right. I thought I saw the shade from Sandman, and I thought I saw the silhouette of Ziggy's mom.
That's it. Yeah, it's just this.
Yeah, that's Ziggy's mom in the shade. That's a derby instead of a top hat. That's hilarious. And the checkerboard. All right.
Yeah, and now that I've started, this art is very Tony Harris. He's going for, without the color, and he's going for a Tony Harris thing. With the, like I said, no hatching, just sort of like what you call this in art school is a graphic translation. That's where you like take a photograph and you try to do a photograph with just black shapes.
I call that Tim Bradstreet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that stuff. What you're talking about, that I've done that as an exercise way back in the day, where you just try to draw black. And it actually came from the Metallica Black album is where I got the idea how to do it. I didn't know what it was called, but when you opened it up, you had like the positive and negative separated real blotchy of every band member's head. And I was sitting around.
My freshman year of art school, it's called graphic translation. So that's one of the assignments you always get.
I love having a name. Hey, look, my art teachers, I had 2 of them, and they were both, there was a lot of time spent with Led Zeppelin and the ganja, you could just look at them and tell,
but I'm having a lot of fun reread, but each issue takes 20 minutes to a half an hour to read.
You see, when it comes to, I think when it comes to, unless you're Steve Gerber, maybe a little Roy Thomas every now and then, not a lot of people can get by with over 120 words and exceeding those on a one comic book page. Chris Claremont couldn't pull it off so much. I think. Right. I mean, there, Mike Thomas definitely on all the time.
Saying something is overwritten only depends on if you like the writing or not.
Yeah. Well, but the comic book page though, it's kind of got to flow. I mean, you're sharing space with I think what it is, I've seen examples of things being in prose. You know what I mean? Right. You've just got it looks like a page out of a book, and the artist has gone around it and kind of drawn like this little montage of things going on with what you're reading and stuff. But I think you're absolutely right. Some people like that stuff, but I'll tell you, there's times I was reading Chris Claremont and I was just like, dear God, Chris, slow down. Come on, man. I got things to do,
I'm really enjoying this. Is the first time I've read it in 17 years. I must say I'm really enjoying seeing it again and through new, like just having read Sandman.
Yeah.
I mean, Starman makes it so different for me.
Well, I'm definitely going to track it down and read it. I just went blank. I was going to tell you something that kind of sounded, Moonshadow. Did you read J.M. DeMonte's and John J. Muse's Moonshadow?
I haven't read it since the late 80s, so I have to reread it.
All right. I've been warned not to read the sequel. But what I'm getting at is it sounds like Paradigm might be something a little bit surreal like that, I can't think of the words right now. You put a dime in the jukebox, man. It's trying to find the record. But what is this?
Oh, yeah.
I recall Paradigm and previews issues in the day. It came out around the same time as Rex Mundi and Clock Tower.
There's a couple of Rex Mundi ads in this. I actually just finished before I started this. I just finished reading Rex Mundi Volume 2.
I've got to read this book. I have got to read this book. I mean,
Rex Mundi Volume 2 was very different than Volume 1, too, in terms of not just that it has a different artist, but in Volume 1, it was kind of dark, mysterious, and there was political stuff going on in the background. And Volume 2 was much more action-oriented. There was actually a shooting war going on now, and and there was more sort of magic stuff in it, and everything came to a head. It ended real well.
It just amazed me that as long as Rex Mundi's been around, it seems like over the years it's kept its fan following, man. It bubbles up, gets mentioned, bubbles back up, gets mentioned. It stayed alive through word of mouth, So I mean, it's time. You're trying to make me spend money, man. I'm getting married. No.
At least I'm giving you stuff that you can find in the dollar bin, probably.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Now,
nobody's CGCing issues of Paradigm. I'm sure if we looked on the census, there'd be no issues of Paradigm in the CGC census.
Now, I'm going to bring up something here where I didn't know this was a series of books. I never realized that. And yet I had the Return of the Jedi one and the Raiders of the Lost Ark one, the movie adaptations. And it's these Marvel super specials. Because what they would do back in the day is that they would come out with these. It would be an adaptation of the movie. And then they would break it down on the newsstand in like 2 or 3 issue miniseries. Right. So these are really cool to get. This one was Dark Crystal actually has a poster. You can pull out. But I'm just kind of wondering, did you get in Sinkovich? I was actually in the hospital getting my appendix took out. A bunch of people bought me comics, and somehow all 3 issues of this came through. And it was kind of jarring. You know what I mean? I was sort of like, was this the Return of the Jedi guy? Because he did the covers and the splash pages.
Right.
I mean, I recognized the guy from the New Mutants, but it was Sinkovich. This is where I really noticed him. And I hate that I can't find the original 3 issues. I've bought them out of dollar bins. But, these Marvel Super Specials and stuff, you got any memories of them there,
Oh, yeah. Marvel. But before we move on, I want to show you this, too.
Oh, yeah.
Books that I have in Mylar, I've been doing the Dr. Strangelove thing Hans showed us how to do, where you clip the corners of the flap at a 30-degree angle and fold it, and then you don't need tape or anything. It just folds right in.
Right into the book.
Comic. It's
nice.
Without clipping those corners, though, it doesn't fold in right. But once you clip those corners, it folds right down back there. So we did
that with the vanilla envelopes and the files that you had where it was a
Right.
string
Okay.
that go around a button. I never ever thought about applying that to comic book bags. Never.
Neither did I until I saw Hans do that, Doctor Strangelove there. But I started doing that with my old, because I don't have everything in Mylar, but I have some things. I actually remember getting the spoiler Empire Strikes Back comic before the movie came out.
I didn't know it was a comic. I heard it was a novel that somebody put out.
No, it was the Marvel Super Special, the graphic, the magazine. I can still remember it because I was not a Star Wars fan as a kid. I didn't even see Star Wars till late. The first Star Wars I saw in the theater, I bothered to see in the theater, was Return of the Jedi in '83. Before then, I didn't see Star Wars till it was on TV in like 1980 or 80. I actually read the novel before I saw the movie. Nice. Just because I just wasn't that interested in it. Especially after I read the novel. I was like, yeah, this is a Western. I was a big Western fan as a kid. But I can remember where I was. I was at the newsstand at Genovese Drugstore, which had a newsstand there. And I just happened to look over, and I knew it was that following weekend, Empire Strikes Back was opening. And I looked over and saw the Marvel adaptation of Empire Strikes Back, and I was like, what the hell is that doing out before the movie opens? Went over, bought it, brought it home, and read it.
I'm trying to think something. I did that with one other movie, with another movie, and it wasn't one of the Star Wars movies. So I may randomly spit out a movie.
That one is famous for spoiling the Empire Strikes Back, because all the newspapers had the recap because of that.
Well, I'm be doing some digging because there's a book that came out and did the same thing to another movie. I mean, that's amazing. There's something else. I think Blade Runner or something. But when it comes, the thing about Star Wars is people used to like come into my house in the earlier days because they were like, no matter where you sat in that house, you were an arm's length away from a stack of comic books. Mm-hmm. Now you're an arm's length away from Star Wars in this whole room. So how did you not? My whole thing is, I mean, I was there. You know, how did you not give into a temptation or end up getting dragged by your friend? I feel like I'm interviewing you now. How the hell were you that one guy? How were you the one guy that didn't make it to the Star Wars movie?
And I was 10 when it came out too, I think.
People would stick people in cars and tell them they were going to a bar or a strip club and actually take them to a drive-in and kidnap them to see it. You know what I mean? That's what you're like.
I really didn't go to the movies that much as a kid. My family just wasn't a movie. But I can actually remember my mother was like, "Oh, do you want to go see Star Wars? Everyone's going to see Star Wars." And I was just like, "Yeah, I was out in the backyard playing, having a good time. I didn't want to go to the movies." And I think there was even at 10 or 11 years old, there was a bit of contrarian in me. I don't trust things that are that popular.
I was finally coming around to the stepdad a little bit when I was like about 6 or 7. Because I'm getting this, I would sit there and look at both my mom and dad. I'm like, he's not my dad, you know, and all this stuff. I was like a little kid telling this. And then he didn't take me to go see Empire Strikes Back. Right. That winter, months later. So, you know, I think those movies came out around May, even back then. So that winter, I remember being in the kitchen and he's in there bragging to his buddies in the kitchen of how badass the Empire was. And that's when we locked eyes. I was just looking at him like, you're dead to me. You know, it's like, that was the day that man was dead to me. You know? I went and saw Flash Gordon instead. So anyway, I didn't see Empire until like 86 or 87 when I could rent it as a VHS. Yeah, I heard about that.
I've heard that many, many times. I don't know how true it is, but they sold a lot of copies of that Star Wars comic. I mean, it was easily their best-selling comic of the decade. So
this is one of the reasons right here that I don't talk too much about Star Wars on here. I mean, I've done a video or two over the years or something, you know, maybe about a comic or something. But I've always been like, there's been two worlds to me, seriously, in my lifetime, you have before Star Wars and after Star Wars. I mean, it was a completely different world from my point of view after Star Wars. I mean, just saying. So when people are not as seasoned as we are and stuff like that, and their introduction to Star Wars or the prequels or these new ones, I totally get kids are going to like those movies no matter what. But there's nothing like that original trilogy magic. There really isn't.
Well, I also think that I always say Star Wars for my generation, sort of the first generation of kids. That's like, yeah, it came out in 77, right?
Yeah.
So that was the summer I turned 11. I was if you were around that age and you saw Star Wars, and I know a lot of people who were around that age and saw Star Wars and love it. And I always say for them, it was the primary religious experience of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for a lot of them, up here, religion isn't the same as it is in the South. And Star Wars has a lot of religious themes in it. And action. So they got out there feeling...
Buddhism, yeah.
Yeah, feeling like they wanted to move things with their mind and be the chosen one.
I'm not saying I didn't try to make my keys come here a few times. Just saying.
But I think that's the attachment a lot of people of my generation have to Star Wars, the sort of emotional attachment they have to it.
Yeah, I mean, I heard over the last 20 years about the religious feelings people had from that they got out of Star Wars. But seriously, when I was a kid, we would go get sticks. We'd go get broomsticks. We'd go get whatever, and we would have sword fights. We would make we'd find pipes, steel pipes, and we make holsters of them. I mean, we went out and it made us go out and play and sword fight. When I was in basic training, the cartilage in both of my knees were shot, and it was pugil stick day, the giant Q-tips. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I've got Sergeant Lauterbauer, who looks like Hitler. He knew what he was doing. He had the little mustache. He had the hair, and he's from Michigan. And he'd be in my face. He didn't like me. My knees are busted. This guy's coming at me with a pugil stick. And I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I took the pugil stick, made it go all the way up. And all of a sudden I'm spinning in place doing Jedi moves on him. And I got cheered. I got cheered because people from all around the country, LA, Michigan, Baltimore, Kentucky, Georgia, were all like, damn, Mullins, we didn't know you were going to come out with some Jedi moves there. Yeah. I went full Jedi in basic training with pugil sticks, and it saved my life. So when people bring up not liking Star Wars, I'm like, it saved my life, man. So yeah, we were doing that.
I think Star Wars was a different thing for people my age than if you were born 30 years later. The Star Wars like now is part of the culture. That's just another part of the culture that you can join in or not.
Aesthetically, I preferred Buck Rogers in Space 1999 over Star Wars, but Star Wars kept coming back and others didn't. I'm on the other side of that stuff. Like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon got a resurgence because of Star Wars. Flash Gordon is what was like a direct inspiration for Star Wars. But that TV show, man, I love that TV show as Buck Rogers as a kid. When I got to rewatch it about 10 years ago, not so much, it broke my heart. Now, here's another thing about the 70s. This is what I'm saying. I personally didn't stand a chance. Star Wars, and then they had Superman. That movie Superman come out by Richard Donner.
My 12-year-old self saw, or maybe 13-year-old self saw Superman and went typical DC ending. Because I was a Marvel Comics kid. And that DC Comics ending on that Superman where they just reversed time and fixed everything, I was like, "All right, this is not for me."
You see, I'm bluntly honest about it. To me, I would sit down as a kid, and I would watch that movie from beginning to end. I remember seeing it at the theater. It wasn't like I was like this little kid thinking I was Superman. It was probably, I really was like, there's a little maturity out of me. But what got me was when I watch it now, I just watch the first 45 minutes, the origin story.
Yeah.
And then after that, I just let the rest of the movie go. And then I skip straight to the second Donner cut of Superman 2,
let's move it back to comics because I want to show you something I mentioned last week that I've also been reading.
All right.
Which is Joe
Peep
Matt's
Show.
Peep Show. I'm up to, this is the series, this is issue 5 that I'm up to, the series that was after this graphic. Have you ever read this?
You showed it to me or something.
Right.
But yeah.
This to me is late 80s, early 90s comics. Like to most people, late 80s, early 90s comics is Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee. To me, it's this. It's Joe Matt, Chester Brown, Peter Bagg, and Daniel Klaus. And I'm just reading this was just such a blast.
Peter
there we
Bagg.
go, Buddy the Dreamer. And this one especially was cool because this is when he was. This was stuff was originally published in in like comic magazines that were anthologies where he had one page. So it's all these tiny little comics. And it's all autobiographical stuff. And it's all about his life and him trying to be a cartoonist and being the cheapest man in the world and not getting along with his girlfriend as he should be. But it's just terrific.
To me, that's when comics were called alternative comics. And they were alternative and inspired and experimental. And they had that feeling of a little bit of taboo with them. That's the name Peep Show. Peep Show would be a perfect name for an 80s alternative
Peep Show, because that's what it is about his life. And this is I can remember when this first came out, when he got an actual comic book to do, and people were disappointed that it wasn't everything crammed on the page like it used to be when he only had one page. So I haven't reread this in maybe 20 years, probably because I read it so much in the 90s. My friends and I were all reading this. This was like a comic we could quote to each other.
I remember the first time I read Watchmen, the trade. I remember the first time I got to read Dark Knight Returns, the trade. And I remember the first time I had a stack of 80s alternative comics. Those are 3 things I wish I could read for the first time again to get that feeling. Because when you read an 80s alternative comic, you really felt like you were reading something that was exciting, a little outlawish. Maybe you didn't want to get caught reading it. It felt like you were getting away with something. But they had a feeling. Yeah.
In the bullpen in the early 90s when we were all helping get out all, the McFarlane and Liefeld and all that stuff. This is what we were reading and talking about all day was Peep Show and Hate. And that was the stuff we were all reading as we were getting the superhero stuff out.
Man, it's awesome. I'm trying to find that issue of Hate we talked about or Trade or whatever a few weeks ago. What was the dude's name that we can't figure out if he shot himself or not?
Oh, Stinky. Right. Stinky.
Yeah. I am determined to find that. So you may end up getting a weird message from me one day where I'm like, I got it.
Yeah, I haven't gotten there in my reading of it. And I think I read the omnibus, which was the first 20 or so issues of it. So it was later on.
It's killing me because I knew I had it. I should still have it, but it's starting to germinate. Well, I'm going to throw out something here that when I was a kid, I still have the original one, but the cover's gone off the back. It was actually my stepdad's. This is one that's intact. It's a little bit beat up. And I think there were 2 of these, right? But these were these magazine side to avoid the comic code Spider-Man stories by your man, John Romita, and Stan Lee. But they got by with it because it's hallucinogenics. Hits them with a goblin gas and he hallucinates a lot of stuff. It's a painted cover by John Romita. There's something magical about everybody going after these Silver Age comics and Bronze Age comics, and they kind of forget about these little specials and magazines they had. Now, the thing about this is we've talked about Spider-Man, how he was just another character and stuff. We're starting to get a continuity, man. We're starting to have like a stream of things I'll bring up that if people remember back in that episode. But to me, what's cool about this is I don't know if this was by design or just Stan Lee really getting into writing, but this is everything that made Spider-Man special that we were talking about. You got Mary Jane, you got Gwen Stacy, you got his cast. This may be the issue where Peter Parker says he'd like to go for a walk with the girl and split a popsicle because he's poor.
Well, that was designed they wanted to open up the magazine market, get more into the magazine market. So I'm guessing they wrote it with that in mind. They wrote that as if a lot of people haven't read. That was the first Spider-Man comic a lot of people would be picking up.
Right. Yeah, no doubt in my mind. But this holds up. This is still beautiful in here when you look at this stuff.
So,
yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Is that what version of that is that? Is that the magazine size one?
Yeah. Now in full color, the Spectacular Spider-Man magazine.
I thought it was in black and white originally, or maybe the second issue was in black and white.
1968. I mean, this is for a 52-year-old comic. I mean, this is about as good a shape as I'm going to get. But and somebody wrote on the back, somebody was keeping continuity in their head. And I kind of appreciate it. They put "Go to Amazing Spider-Man number 68." This is
somebody hand wrote that.
He figured this guy, and I can't verify it. You know what I mean?
He figured out where in continuity it took place, and
yes, and he wrote himself a note. This is when people read their comics, people. He figured out exactly where this took place and went on. So I always thought that was pretty cool. And then there was supposed to have been another one after this. I have no idea if they made another Spectacular Spider-Man magazine.
I think there were 2 issues of it.
Yeah.
I'm not positive. They reprinted it in the early 2000s, Marvel did, in their graphic novel format. I remember that. But I don't remember. I remember it being in black and white too, but I could be misremembering, or issue 2 may have been in black and white.
He wrote himself another note to go to issue 65 to see what they were talking about. I mean,
he put his own editor's notes in there.
Yeah, I mean, this takes place over time. This isn't like a story that takes place in 2 or 3 days. But yeah, he went through and figured out where these scenes take place with continuity. In 1968, my friend. Yeah.
You got the good copy.
I'm fine with it, man. I dig it. But we got the Nightmare of Aunt May. And I mean, this is just everything Spider-Man was in the 60s that made it special,
Like I said, they were really trying to make that for people who maybe haven't read much Spider-Man.
Yeah. What kills me, though, is that he even put in fishnet on Gwen Stacy. He took the time. Stan Lee's wife. I want to put fishnet. Gwen Stacy was based on Stan Lee's wife, and here's Johnny Romita I want to put a little fishnet on her. How you like that, Stan? How you like that? Cracks me up.
And they say that Betty Brant was based on Flo Steinberg.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, amongst the grapevine of the comic book collectors of the 80s.
I don't know if Steve Ditko ever said that, but
I don't know, but I remember hearing people saying that Gwen Stacy's based on Stan Lee, and then I remember, and I think it was around the time Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movie came out. They interviewed Stan Lee, and somewhere along the line, he said, "Yeah, it was based on I based her on my wife." My mouth dropped. I'd heard that for 20 years, and just kind of thought it was people talking about things they heard, like it was a rumor. And then here's Stan Lee saying, "Oh yeah, she's based on my wife." Then I heard how he got his wife, and I was like, "Well, look at old Stan there, took her." Oh,
she's mine now. Did he have a second wife, or did he have the one wife all along?
I think he was with her the whole time.
Okay.
I think he had one wife. He came back from the war, saw her with her husband. The way the story goes, he went right to her freaking apartment and was like, "Let's be together." Shift her off to like Colorado or Utah, where you can get a divorce in 6 months. Went and got her, came back, and they were married. I was like, that's a freaking comic book. Let's see that. Come on, man. What we got here? Dr. Silver Age. He has to admit he likes the Mandalorian show on Disney was fantastic.
Yeah, didn't like the end of the last episode, but that Prison Break episode was my favorite. I could watch that over and over.
Well, it's a space western. That's the magic of that Mandalorian show. He wrote it like the first Star Wars was a space western.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek guy, I like them both. I could never get into the debate of what's better, Star Wars or Star Trek. They're different. They're different. They're both good.
I was always more of a Star Trek fan than a Star, but I'm not much of either anymore. I've given up any fandom that's not based on the actual creators, kind of thing.
Tom Palmer Jr. Wizard. I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, I mean, you said you gave up on any kind of fandom right now?
Give up on any kind of fandom that's not based on the creators, because it's like, I realized it was like when I think it was the J.J. Abrams Star Trek came out, that everybody was getting excited over it, and everybody was liking it. Oh, it's a new reboot for Star Trek. The Star Trek. I mean, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek. Oh, it's decent. And I had zero interest in it. And that's what I realized. The reason I had zero interest in it was because, like, all these franchises are nothing more than marketing. The reason I liked Star Trek originally was because the actors, because the writers, was because of this all this stuff. And now all those guys are not even involved in the least with it. It's just marketing, and it's Johnny Bravo. They're just there because they fit the suit.
You care if I jump in here a little bit?
Jump in.
I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the Star Trek super fan, right? Star Wars, right. I win the trivia contest on the original ones. Mm-hmm. I've got but when it comes to Star Trek, I went in that movie with J.J. Abrams with an open mind, and they had an out. Okay, your timeline for Star Trek is still there, but this is where it changed, and we're going over here. So they did that thing where it's two timelines. That opened my mind to like, oh, okay. They didn't destroy. They're not saying this. They acknowledge it. And here's what it was missing. The whole fact of Star Trek is you have to have a character like Seven of Nine, Data, or Spock, where you're explaining and showing humanity that people are trying to figure out. And that's what gives the show its positivity and explore its themes to explorers. Once you know that secret and you really pay attention to a lot of the stories, you start seeing it's really about humanity. And maybe it's social issues and being positive, the good and the bad. That's why I hate when people try to bring in social justice and stuff like that's not what it's about. It's about humanity, us as people. You're trying to teach a Borg how to find her humanity. Data wants to be human. Spock is illogical and thinks humans are illogical because we're human, and he struggles with this half human side. You get into that stuff, that's what was missing from the J.J. Abrams stuff. Plus, they totally messed up Khan. I don't even want to talk about it. That's when I was out, Well,
like I said, it's like really what interest would you really have in? And it's like a lot of these movies might be more that like the J.J. Abrams. Not that I saw it. The J.J. Abrams Star Trek might have been better if it wasn't a Star Trek movie. If it was that's
what I said about the Fright Night reboot. That's what I said about. I've said this about Star Trek, like you're saying. Right. The Fright Night movie is the one that made me realize this stuff would have been good. If they hadn't called it that, it could have been its own thing. You're absolutely right. I mean, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
But marketing runs all this stuff. Marketing is so important that it runs all this stuff because people will rush to see a new Star Wars movie. They won't rush to see a new space opera with a different name.
They're not rushing anything like they used to with Star Wars. Here's what I think is going on, and I will totally take flack. You don't have to prove me wrong. You don't have to prove me right. But we're at an era where they've killed Doctor Who. They've killed Star Trek. These things didn't run out of steam.
But I'll say they didn't kill them.
No. What's happening? What's happening? Let me finish my sentence.
Hold on a second. Yeah. My idea is they haven't killed these franchises. We liked these franchises because of who made them. All those people who made them are gone.
Well, it's not, or it's been taken from them. Yeah.
But my thing is it's like in the world of comic books, you're going to, or most, not everybody, some people do just follow characters and pay no attention to the creators. Yeah. But who's one of your favorite comic book creators?
Off the top of my head. We'll just go with Kirby. Kirby's
one of your favorite creators. Yeah. When Jack Kirby puts out a new book written and drawn by Jack Kirby, you're going to be excited about it. Why? Because it's Jack Kirby. When two random guys do take the Eternals and put out a new comic book of it, you're going to go, who cares? It's not Jack Kirby.
Unless you're handed over to a name. You know what I mean?
Right. Alan Moore follows guy you think is talented.
Well, let me back up for a minute. What I was going to say about those genres, and then I'll get back to your question. What I was about to say that we're living in a time where it's like us watching the Westerns die the way they did. You know what I mean? Like it used to be TV Westerns, movie Westerns. And then Buck Rogers, people remember Buck Rogers, but how long has Buck Rogers been really gone? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
He'll pop back up. They're in the past, they're part of fandom, and that's what we're seeing with a lot of these things. Now, getting back to what you were saying, somebody could come in and give it a shot in the arm. If Kirby left the book, I mean, let's say I can pick anybody from any time,
right,
alive or dead. Kirby comes on a book. I'm excited about it. We saw what happened with Commandy. You know what I mean? Whoever took it over. Commandy wasn't that big of a deal, right? And then all of a sudden, but tell me Alan Moore is coming on. Another name, another famous person, somebody that's got a reputation of being able to write quality stuff. You can get excited about it.
Right, because of the talent. The problem, it's once it's when I realized, like with the Star Trek one, the only reason I'd be interested in Star Trek now is because it was just marketing. There was no talent involved with it that I was interested in, and I realized that most people were going to see it because of the marketing, because of the name Star Trek. Other than
because of the flair that showed in the trailer. Yeah.
And everybody's disappointed over and over and over. And I'm like, the reason you're disappointed was because it was the talent that made you like Star Trek. The talented people who did it in this time, in this place. All those people are gone. You're going to see a movie because you liked those. You're going to see a movie because you liked the way the people did it in the 60s. It's not those people. But that's what amazed me. And after that, I was like, you know what? I'm not interested in any franchises, anything. I'm only interested in the talent. If people make something, I'll see it.
I totally get what you're saying. Gene Roddenberry, Star Trek's not Gene Roddenberry. What happens is sometimes the creators become characters on their own by pure accident. You know what I mean? Like, this is the Gene Roddenberry. You know who created it. You may not know who Gene Roddenberry is, but you've watched Star Wars for so long, and when you see his name on it, you feel all right. You know, like, okay, this is the guy that created. I totally get that. But then you have something like Doctor Who that comes along, and they hired actual science fiction writers in the 70s, and then they brought it back in the 2000s, and they kept the themes and stuff going. They didn't kill it until like the last Peter Capaldi come on, and it wasn't his fault. Inept writers, people don't know anything about it. I mean, that's a franchise that's been around for 60 years.
I think Doctor Who is a unique case.
I don't know. James Bond, you know?
Well, I think the fans of Doctor Who, the hardcore fans of Doctor Who, know that if they don't like this Doctor Who, another one will be along. If they don't like the talent of the people who are making this one, another one will be along after it in a couple of years that maybe they'll like better.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, that's part of why they hang in there. Yeah,
I know.
But
I think there was a continuity of talent. That's why they hang in there. Other stuff doesn't have that. And once that continuity of talent is broken, once too many bad Doctor Who's are there, and they're going to stop watching altogether.
Okay. Is it the lack of talent? But with Doctor Who, is it the lack of talent, or is it completely destroying 60 years of what they've done in one episode?
It doesn't matter. All that matters. But what it is the reason they could get you excited about a Star Trek movie is because you like what these other guys did with Star Trek in the 60s. That's how they get you excited about Star Trek. They make you think it's the same thing. Something you already like. Here it is, the new version. That's how the marketers get you to like it. Because otherwise, why? If they put out the exact same J.J. Abrams movie without Star Trek, without the Star Trek license, it was just new science fiction movie, less people would be interested in it. Because they make you like it by leveraging that you already like this other thing with the same name and the same characters. They do the same thing with Doctor Who, but they've been doing it for so many years. They know how to do it. They kept it up. They knew how to make Doctor Who for their fans. But in the last 15 years, you've got a whole new generation of creators making Doctor Who that want to make Doctor Who for different fans. They wanted Doctor Who to grow because it's growth, growth, growth. We need growth, growth, growth. That's our system. So that's why Doctor Who changed, kind of. It became different. More people did watch it and did like it, but they're still leveraging.
They didn't retain them at all. They didn't keep people picked it out. They came
Doctor
in
Who that might fall off a cliff, but it'll fall off a cliff because the talent making it now.
Doctor Who is okay.
Making it then, and they lost the thread of it. They lost the ability to make you like this Doctor Who because you liked that Doctor Who. That's what. That's when franchises die. They say when they can no longer convince you to like something because you liked the first movie. Now you don't like the 16th movie. They can't convince you to go see the 16th movie anymore because you liked the first movie. That's when the franchise dies.
And then we're circling back to what I was saying. For whatever reason, and it's a big part of what you're saying. I'll agree with that. These franchises are dying. They're become something of the past. We can go revisit them and stuff, but there's nothing coming up to kind of replace those either. Now, the thing about Doctor Who, I could talk all day long about why that thing died and what they did, but I think you reach a certain point. Also, you have to admit that when you get so far away from what's already established, we're talking 60 years. There's people who watched that show in the 60s who aren't here now, yet they still kept a little bit of a continuity going, a little respect for we don't go too far, we don't mess with this because there's stuff to look at.
One of the reasons they were able to do that is because Doctor Who was small and under the radar. Doctor Who is small and under the radar, so they could keep it that way. Once Doctor Who gets bigger, and the people who wanted it bigger, completely different set of marketing stuff.
I saw the people online, and I was involved with all these people yelling they want a female Doctor Who. I mean, it's all old news. I've got the video up with the Twitter things. That ended up becoming a whole other thing than kind of what you're talking about with that. But with Star Wars or Star Trek and Star Wars, I think what you're saying applies perfectly, at least to Star Trek, big time. You know, just off the top of
my head. Of those
really interesting.
At least some of those Star Wars guys were still around to make the movie, so it's easy to convince you, easier, because some of the talent is still there.
Well, we had a chance to see the whole original cast on screen one more time, and they didn't do it. They told when Luke Skywalker threw that lightsaber over his shoulder, that was just a big slap in the face to the whole fandom. They act like that second movie, The Last Jedi, never happened. Now is what they're trying to do. There's times where you just kill a franchise because you do something stupid and make a bad movie. And it's one thing that movie could stand on its own, but it makes a statement of everything behind it. And then he put Luke Skywalker, his last fight was on a planet made of salt. That's mocking the fandom, saying, I'm gonna lick your, you're gonna be salty about it. I know. I mean, there's little messages as they do.
Hey, I told you never call me on this phone.
Yeah, man. You're gonna be up here. I'm doing a live show here, but we'll wrap it up here in a minute. Is everything okay?
Always felt the canon of Star Wars was the novels and comics until Disney started it.
This is the Tim Anderson guy I talk about all the time. You want to say hello, Tim? No. All right, I'll call you in a little bit, man. All right, bye. It's an official Howler show now. No,
you're interrupted. But I think like I said, I decided not to pay attention to marketing anymore and like what I like because of the talent involved and not the marketing. So just because I liked a movie in 1989 doesn't mean I have any interest in a sequel to the movie. But one of my favorite movies is Blade Runner. Love Blade Runner. Yes. I haven't bothered to watch the latest Blade Runner because I've had no reason to bother to watch the latest Blade Runner. Why?
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, it just reaches I get what you're.
Yeah,
we're probably on the same page on this one.
Yeah,
we just wanted to plan two different. We're coming at it from two different angles and find out we're saying the same thing. I watched the second Blade Runner with very low expectations, because by this time Hollywood has regurgitated everything, or they just spray everything out, and it's always an inferior product. It blows my mind how they have the better technology, they could have the better everything, yet they can't get it in the writing. I mean, then we're getting into a matter of opinion and kind of expectations of what you can have. Blade Runner again could have been very cool if they didn't try to tie it to Harrison Ford. Just take it in the future and let go. But they
once again
hard to tie it to a movie from 40 years ago.
If it wasn't Blade Runner, if it was just its own sci-fi movie, I might actually watch it.
Right. Yeah. See, now I know what you're talking about. I watched it knowing what was going on. It ended up being almost exactly what I expected it to be. Right. If that makes any sense, an inferior movie that could have been better. That's how I feel about it. Right. But I like Blade Runner, and I like the idea of keeping it alive, because we can have this conversation 6 weeks from now, and I might be saying something different. But I think we're at a point in time where a lot of our stuff is really, maybe dead's not the word, but it's definitely going into the background, and we're going to start revisiting it like I do radio shows, old TV programs. It's not the front and center anymore. They've killed it. I feel like it. It's not that some of these things ran out of steam naturally, and some of them they killed it because they're stupid.
That just reminded me of something that. Do you know the YouTuber Masked Panther?
No.
He's been around. I comment on his videos all the time. He's been around for a bunch of years now, but he's really a small channel, probably 100 subscribers or something. And he wears a mask. He doesn't like to.
I've worked in mask now. I don't think I know him. Let me look here.
And I think he's a younger guy. I think he was in his early 20s when he started. Maybe he's in his mid 20s now. But one of the things he always said that annoys him is his generation has nothing that's its own.
No, I agree with him.
All of his pop culture is left over from the generations before him, because it's all sequels and reboots. And I was like, I never thought of that before.
Oh, I've got videos 10 years ago, man, saying the same thing. They want what we had. That's how I worded it. But I was very tactful when I said it. I think I've got a video called Millennials versus this versus that. I mean, I can think of a couple places. Maybe it's why I worked in schools for 5 years. Yeah, I think about 5 years I worked in schools. You know what I mean? Maybe I picked up on it. And but yeah, no, I agree with them. There's a song by Strands of Oak. And in the middle, and he opens up the song saying he was born in the middle. Everything good had already been done. So this is not, I don't think this is like a big revelation, but for a kid to have that insight, I mean, I know he's in his 20s. Not a lot of people still have that insight. It's not news because other people have said it, but it doesn't seem like they all get it. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the last big thing. The Matrix was the late 90s.
Yeah.
Maybe Harry Potter. When was Harry Potter?
Harry Potter was a book, and those movies were, I know I took my son, so I'm going to say 2002.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. I'm trying to think of it. That's what I'm trying to say. I've said what we're thinking about. I've said this before.
Harry Potter and the Matrix might be two of the latest big things.
Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
Lord of the Rings is old. That doesn't count.
J.K. Rowling is killing people's childhoods the more she talks on Twitter. I've seen people turning on Harry Potter. It may not have the life at once,
I think it'll be okay. But anyway, I think that might have been the last big thing. I can't. Did you think of anything?
No, that's what I'm trying to say. They tried to bring back Ghostbusters. They tried to bring back Blade. They tried to bring back Star Wars. We can go on and on. You know what I mean?
They've tried to bring back. I'm just saying new thing for whatever generation.
No, again, we're saying the same thing. I'm naming off everything that they've tried to make into franchises. I mean, one of the last movies they might have tried that may go into a franchise that you didn't even know it was like Leave Extraordinary Gentlemen. Sean Connery signed up for that because he was wanting another franchise. There's been more failures than you know.
That's 20 years old at this point.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah. It's the same thing. There was franchises trying to get built. around the time Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings were coming out.
They're always trying to build franchises. I'm just trying to think of anything new they tried to build a franchise out of since Harry, or anything that there's nothing. Now that's what Black Panther was Masked Panther was complaining about.
They're talking about Pixar here stuff. I mean, we'll talk about it, but see, the thing about it is there's no excuse. There is no excuse for when your one job is to make movies and stuff. You got people wanting scripts. They're wanting $1 million. I think the material is out there, but they just want to do the stuff they already have the license to. With things where they think it has a built-in audience.
If you were like 20, if you were 21 years old in 1978, what could have been your culture? Lots of things.
Planet of the Apes, music, Led Zeppelin,
Godfather, tons of classic rock music. All that stuff was invented in the 70s. In the 80s, there was a bunch of. If you were 21 years old right now, what would be your culture? What would be your generation's thing? Twitter.
Chat.
Even that's 12 years old.
Yeah. Twitter, your phone, social media.
Movies. Yeah, if you were 21 in 1977, you could have been the Kung Fu movie guy. You could have been the blaxploitation movie guy.
I mean, I was 5 years old. I mean, I've had the talks on here with you. I mean, at 5 years old in the 70s, I was watching Star Trek Godzilla movies on a Sunday, watching Johnny Quest Saturday morning cartoons on a Saturday, then going outside. You had Superman movies, you had this movie, you had that movie. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. You still had time to go out and play, but they were still making great things. Aliens. I heard of Aliens in 1979. I heard Alien and knew what it was. You know what I mean?
And if you were like 21 years old in like 1997, you had a choice. You had new stuff still coming out. You could embrace the old stuff.
Oh man. You know what? I can't believe this. Let me get my Facebook memory up. I just remembered this. If you look at what you were into in the 70s and 80s, that's what they're still trying to mine. Let me get my Facebook up real quick. I think I can get it to pop up here. If not,
Halloween came out in 78. Great franchise. Like I said, I mean, when did it stop? It must have stopped sometime in the aughts.
It stopped after Lord. Off the top of my head, it stopped after Lord of the Rings. Because they had some movies coming out they thought were going to be franchises and it didn't happen. Harry Potter movies kept going. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, we could have this talk 6 weeks from now and I'll be like, wait, you know, I've got a
I'm trying to think.
Here we go.
I'm trying to think if I were 21 years old, what would be my thing? It would all be the past.
This is from July. This is from June 26, 2019. And it's a movie marquee. And on it, it has Toy Story, Men in Black, Godzilla, Aladdin, and Child's Play. What year do you think you're in? Let it focus.
Oh, geez. Was it? I don't even know. 1998?
This is 2019. This is a marquee from 2019.
Whoa.
They redid, you know, maybe 2018 because I posted it on 2019. But they have the remake of Child's Play. The new Godzilla, the live action Aladdin.
That's what the Masked Panther was saying when he said that, is that they have nothing that's their own.
Yeah, and I've noticed this for over a decade.
Recycled.
Yeah, I'm serious. I have videos probably from 2012 where I said that. Yeah. It's like I said, it's not a big revelation. I mean, kudos to the kid for this video.
I never thought of that before. It's just something that never entered my mind.
Here's what I find interesting. I don't know the Max Panther kid, you know, don't get me wrong, you know, but he's wearing a mask. For him to say something like that could get him canceled by his contemporaries. So I'm wondering why he's wearing the mask. No,
I don't
really.
think enough people are watching him. I think he just has anxiety stuff, but he doesn't want to be shown.
His world. You see, you said the word anxiety. It's his world. That's kids today. Cancel culture is huge. He could say one thing wrong, and in his sentence, and they'd come after him.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine growing up with Twitter and Facebook. That'd be nuts. I don't know how that happens.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I'll get off my rant here. I'm not going to get started, but for a kid like him to come on and say something like that, that actually is a brave thing to do with these kids nowadays. To say that, you know. just saying that's the difference between our generation and this one. They really have to watch what they say online, you know.
Yeah, because who knows who's watching.
Jenna Marbles quit YouTube because of this
I saw
stuff.
something about that. I barely knew who she was.
Okay. Well, man, it is 9:11. I think we've been on here we are in 30 in 2 hours. It'll be in even 2 hours. And I silenced my phone. I now have 2 calls to make. Not on half.
Alrighty.
But
a good time was had.
Appreciate it, man. I don't know. I might try to sneak one more in. If I can give you a yell at the weekend, I will. I'll message you.
Okay.
You know, I'm not saying we're going to do it, guys, but hit that bell. You know.
Once again, I'm still here in quarantine, social distancing, or whatever I'm doing on a pause.
Finish these. I'm going to finish these quotes here. Heck, it just came out a good movie. It, not great, but the novel from the 80s. The first movie was good. The second one suffered, but I love. And
it's already been a movie and a TV show and a this and a that. It's like,
Even pro wrestling, the promos of the wrestlers in the 80s is so much different than now. It's because they worked on their characters for years across the world and country before they got to the WWE.
After the Hunger Games and Twilight, I even forgot about those, but they're a while ago now, aren't they? I mean, they're not particularly new, and if you're a dude, you might not be into them.
I saw 50-year-old women lusting after a 20-year-old guy. That was gross. Yeah. All right, man.
Okay.
Well, guys, thanks for
Everybody
popping
have a good week out there.
Everybody be cool and be excellent to each other, man. Later, guys.
I'll catch you later.